So if you've watched the other parts of these videos, you'll know that I had a planned C-section. That actually was like, finding that out was probably one of the first times that I like really cried, like very, very hard during my pregnancy. I think there were like maybe one or two other times, like when I was sick and stuff like that. But this was like getting news from the doctor, like, and it was really hard for me. It wasn't so much that the C-section was such a surprise. Like I mentioned before, we knew that there was a very high chance that I would have to have a C-section. It was that I didn't realize that C-sections kind of come in different packages. So something that I didn't mention in the third trimester one, that's a huge development, but it just happened so late I didn't think of it, was that I also had, in addition to my fibroid, something called placenta previa. And for those of you who don't know what that is, placenta previa is basically a condition or situation, I don't know what to call it, where your placenta, which is the sac that feeds the baby and takes care of the baby and all that, it's too close to the cervix. The cervix is the opening that dilates, that allows the baby to pass through when you deliver the baby. So if you can imagine, you don't want the placenta to be too close to the cervix. Like a best case scenario, based on what I've been told and what I've read, is that the placenta is actually like up high and the baby's down low, so the baby passes through the cervix and you deliver the baby, and then the placenta comes after, so that the baby continues to get the nutrients and everything it needs to support it through the delivery. Well, if it's too close to the cervix, there's a huge consideration about whether or not the delivery will be able to happen in a safe way, and the medical care team didn't want to take that risk. So basically, the due date for Naomi was supposed to be like January 27th, like the end of the month, and it went from that to being like the beginning of January, you guys. And we launched a company at the end of the year. We sold a house at the end of the year. Like, we were just so insanely busy, and we were in the thick of all of these things happening when I got the news, and it just unraveled me. Like, I was so upset. Primarily because, one, it was information that I felt like I could have been provided in advance, so I could have prepared for it, and two, it basically cut our preparation for her by almost a month. So that was just really hard for me. So here's what I suggest. If you have any type of complication with your pregnancy or anything going on, know your personality, right? Like, I'm somebody who can Google a lot of things, and then I go to the doctor and I ask them things. For some reason, even though I Googled a ton about placenta previa, for starters, we were kind of hoping that like the placenta would move, that the fibroid would move, like down to like the last week. We were literally like, maybe a miracle can happen. Like, the medical care team was really supportive about that. And we just, stuff happens. Like, why assume the worst if there's a possibility that like a better outcome can happen? What I didn't realize, though, like I said, was that the context for the placenta previa is that the C-section has to be done at like 37 weeks or something like that. So that just, I don't know what happened. It was a breakdown of communication on their end. I missed it when I was Googling. I just don't think it was something that I knew to even look for. So that was a blow. That was really hard, because I was like, gosh, like, this changes everything. It changes our timelines, just the whole nine. So that was really difficult. So if you can imagine, our post journey started earlier than I thought it was going to. I know that I got a lot of questions about the C-section. I think I'll answer that in the Q&A. But do not stop taking your laxatives like postpartum. Let me start with something more positive. Having a baby is beautiful. Like, whether you have it vaginally, C-section, like, don't have complexes about like how you deliver your baby. Thank God, like I said, it was presented to me from the beginning. So the goal was to have a safe baby. And that was just what I was committed to. What the irony is that with Naomi, one of the biggest things was that they wanted to have her, the C-section is planned as early as possible to prevent me going into like spontaneous labor. And then I got in there, and like the anesthesia like triggered it anyway. So I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is the thing we didn't want. So that was definitely like kind of a blow. But what was so cool was like, by the time they finally, like, the pediatricians had figured out that she was okay and she was passed to Warren and I, like, it is just you don't care. Like, it's funny, you know how like you see the videos and the babies are covered in like all the stuff, and it's like, you know, in that moment, like you don't care. Like they could have had like a little poop on them or something like that, and you would have been like, it's the best smelling poop ever. It's a really, really, really beautiful moment, and I don't know, it was just so special. But like I said, I'm trying to stay on task. What I didn't know is that in my experience, at least, there were a couple of things with the anesthesia. So the first thing is the anesthesia, them doing the epidural didn't hurt me at all, by the way. They had an amazing like team. Like my doctor was great. The anesthesia team was really awesome. That was just the most positive part of my hospital experience, that and the nurses were really sweet. So anyway, they did the anesthesia. I really did not like how it felt like with my legs being numb. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know if like my only reference is the dentist. I've never had a major surgery before, but I just didn't like it's. You can move like the upper part of your body, like kind of like here, but everything else you can't move. So you can kind of feel the weight of it, but you can't feel like in a sensory way, like touching or obviously anything, because they're gonna do the C-section. And the nausea, you guys, like for all the like grace that I got with nausea, like during the pregnancy, like that one moment, like, and the guy had told me, he was like, you might get a little nauseous, let me know, I'm gonna give you some nausea medicine. The like wave of nausea that came over me was like insane. Like it literally, I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, the bucket, I need the bucket, because I was like, oh, I'll be fine. No, it like was wild. But the cool thing is, as soon as he did the nausea medicine or whatever, it immediately went away. But it was awful, and it happened twice. I think what kind of sobered me up a little bit also was like everybody kind of started freaking out, like, because they were like, her little heart rate is dropped, and I was like, oh, I can't be sick right now. So I think I kind of snapped out of it. But that, you know, was something that I really didn't like. And then I guess a side effect was that my entire like lower half of my body like swelled up like crazy. Like it literally, like it looked like I had gotten some work done or something like that, and I was this curvy little big bang. But it went from like cute swelling to like my feet were swelling. Like I just felt like in the Nutty Professor when his body is like going like this. It just like looked so wild. Something that I had heard, and I do think that it's kind of true in my experience at least, is that if you have a C-section, like you may have less bleeding, which was totally my experience. So I bled not even crazy, like for the first week. At that point I was like coming home and everything, and then or already home, and then I didn't have anything for like the following week, and then like I started like really feeling good after my first week home. So at that point I was like up, cleaning, working, doing all this stuff, and for one reason or another that has kind of triggered, like, and that's where I am now, that has kind of triggered the spotting again. So I don't know, I don't really have answers about the bleeding postpartum thing fully, because I'm still in the window of like when they expect that you can bleed. I will say that like with my C-section, I think that has been like one of the hardest things. Like they do give you a lot of medication. I only took it for a week, and thank God I didn't have to like re-up, and even like the regular painkillers, like just the leave, I don't have to like take that or anything. But what I can say is like, I think it's already like, you know, you're gonna have a scar. Like I just really wanted to try to do everything right, so at least like if I have to have this version of a post-delivery experience, like hopefully I can put myself in good positioning. And I will say like it's been something that I've just kind of like danced around and kind of tiptoed around, like in terms of like engaging with my incision scar. They give you this like cleaning solution so that you're able to like really gently like clean it off. But it's like I said, I think it's just a little too early, like for me to, I'm not fully healed yet and all that stuff. But I will say that after a week, I was like, do I need to like kind of like not do anything and just sit around? I was like, I feel fine. So I hit the ground running and we started making moves again. So yeah, that was something that was great. The one thing, and I'm trying to keep these videos short, but I have to touch on this too. The one thing postpartum, in addition to the constipation, which is like I can't believe that I'm still talking about that, is nursing. Breastfeeding, like for me, it's been the most ironic part of the entire pregnancy postpartum experience, because it just blows my mind that you can have a baby and not like have this perfect feeding system like already put in place for you. And I am really disappointed about that, to be honest with you. I just have to be real, because it's one of those things where it's like, I have a child, my child needs to eat, my body knows I have a child, and it's not that I'm not producing milk, to be clear. It's not that she's not latching. It's that we were in the hospital and we needed to add formula to her diet to supplement her because she was tiny. And it was just so frustrating for me that I wasn't automatically able to provide in full what she needed. So our breastfeeding journey, like I said, we're still only a month out, and it's just too early for me to make a call on what that's going to be or what that, has the potential to be. But just know there isn't a guarantee necessarily. I've heard stories of women who they 2 months out, they're already leaking, and their boobs are doing all this stuff, and they have too much milk, they have an oversupply, their fridge is full, whatever. That has not been my experience. So I just want to say that in case it's encouraging for anybody who is just finding breastfeeding to be difficult. Commit to finding somebody who makes you feel good. And I think this is the last thing that I want to speak on. For me, the experience that I had with the lactation consultant in the hospital was not a good one. I actually had 3 that I worked with. We were there for 4 days. So the last one we saw twice. I don't really have anything good to say about her, and I'm not going to waste time going on and on about her. But what I can say is thank God for the internet and social media and our pediatrician, because those conversations, whether from accounts that are really encouraging or just from people who reached out and who shared their experiences with breastfeeding, that's the encouragement that I've needed. That has been so helpful. So I think one of the biggest things that I want to stress, and this is something from the whole pregnancy to postpartum to breastfeeding, the whole nine, it is incredibly important for me, and hopefully for you too, to put yourself in settings and environments where you feel loved as much as you can with someone that you don't know, where you feel encouraged and where you feel supported. Because there's a certain vulnerability that comes with pregnancy, because you hope that whoever you're speaking to is an expert. And I think that you just have to prioritize your mental and emotional health. So if you know that conversations with one doctor, it makes you feel bad after leaving, either request not to see that doctor again or switch medical teams altogether. If there is advice that you receive that just doesn't sit well with you, there's a reason why we have the expression women's intuition. Go with your gut and find somebody else who speaks your language. Communication just comes down to am I communicating in a way that's going to be receptive for the person that I'm speaking to? Maybe what they've done before worked for a million other people. If it doesn't work for you, prioritize you, because that's going to benefit your baby. So I cannot stress that enough. Find the support team that you need. Your friends hopefully will step up and love on you as well. And I think that that's what I want to end on. I'm just so thankful for my community, and for friends, and even people who just have stepped up in ways that I wouldn't have expected, doctors who took extra time, or somebody who just shared part of their story that they didn't even know was going to be encouraging. I just can't speak highly enough about all that, and just say thank you for the love. It just, it's a tangible thing, especially in these weird times that we're living, and it just means so much. So I say all that to say, being pregnant is wild. It's beautiful and it's exciting, and everybody's pumped about the baby, but don't feel bad for feeling bad. Don't feel bad for being overwhelmed. Don't feel bad for feeling like you're not as productive. I think that was one of the hardest things for me. My to-do list is always a million things long. I'll stay up until 4 o'clock in the morning if I have to, trying to knock things out. And it was just such a hard adjustment, and honestly has still been a really hard adjustment to having your body physically sit you down. And now we have this little baby who, she's this big and she's running us. And she says jump and we ask how high. So it just, be open to those changes and to how things can radically look very different very quickly, and just soak it all in, because everything they say about newborn smells and snuggles. It's all true. So anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope that this is encouraging and helpful, and best of luck to you in your pregnancy journey.